Thank you for joining me as we take a look at what these Americans have been saying about COVID-19 and their vaccines.
So, am I a conspiracy theorist or am I Nostradamus? The answer is neither. I'm just not on Big Pharma's payroll, and I refuse to peddle in their lies.
And that was Candace Owens saying that she's against the vaccine because she's not on the payroll of a pharmaceutical company, and so she's not going to spread lies on behalf of them. And now that's an interesting concept I think we should explore. Someone lying to their audience, or at least misleading their audience, with the ultimate outcome being beneficial for a pharmaceutical company. Now let's have a look at a clip from a while ago of Dennis Prager when he had COVID.
I have COVID. I was tested positive last week, and I have been steadily improving. At no point was I in danger of hospitalization. I have received monoclonal antibodies. That's Regeneron. I have, of course, for years, a year and a half, not years, been taking hydroxychloroquine from the beginning with zinc. I've taken Z-Pak, the erythromycin, as the Zelenko protocol would have it. I have taken ivermectin. I have done what a person should do if one is not going to get vaccinated.
Now, that was a very long list of pharmaceuticals, and I'm guessing most of them were treatments after he actually tested positive for COVID. But I just want to focus on the fact that he said he was taking hydroxychloroquine for a year and a half at that stage. I'm guessing daily. Now, if he had malaria, rheumatoid arthritis, or lupus, fair enough, because hydroxychloroquine is prescribed to people with those medical issues. But he's actually taking it for COVID for a year and a half. Wow. Now let's go back to that clip.
It is infinitely preferable to have natural immunity than vaccine immunity. And that is what I hoped for the entire time.
Now what gets me about this is if you're taking something for a year and a half, it seems like it would be a preventative measure. But as he's about to go on to say, he wanted to catch COVID so he can receive therapeutics, and he believes that's what should have happened to the majority of Americans.
Hence, I so engaged with strangers, constantly hugging them, taking photos with them, knowing that I was making myself very susceptible to getting COVID, which is indeed, as bizarre as it sounded, what I wanted, in the hope that I would achieve natural immunity and be taken care of by therapeutics. That is exactly what has happened. It should have happened to the great majority of Americans.
Feeling very weary. I had a headache, and I just felt run down. And just to be cautious, I separated from my family, slept in a different part of the house.
Next up is Joe Rogan. It's good to see that he wanted to protect his family by isolating, but I wonder how many people live in a home big enough for them to be able to isolate from the rest of their family. Bit unfortunate if you're in a small apartment or were a single parent or something.
And throughout the night, I got fevers and sweats, and I knew what was going on. So I got up in the morning, got tested, and turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything. And I also got an NAD drip and a vitamin drip, and I did that 3 days in a row.
Again, that was quite a long list of pharmaceuticals. Now look, I've got nothing against someone trying to get healthy once they're sick, but I could only imagine that that would all cost a lot of money, which Joe Rogan would have, but not all Americans would have. And he said that he received drips, like vitamin drips, and that's how you receive the monoclonal antibodies, and that takes time. So not only do you need the money, but you also need the time.
And so here we are on Wednesday, and I feel great. I really only had one bad day. Sunday sucked. But Monday was better. Tuesday felt better than Monday. And today I feel good. I actually feel pretty fucking good.
You have COVID right now?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've been off for about a week. I mean, I've been doing my show. It's a lighter case, but it's now starting to go into my lungs today, and a little disturbing. But I'm on all the medication and treatment and everything else.
And now this is Glen Beck at the start of 2022, and he's talking about having COVID, and I believe this is for the second time.
We'll see.
So wait a minute, it's going
good.
into your... Have you gotten any monoclonal? I'm serious about this.
No, the monoclonal doesn't seem to be working for the new strain, and you can't. But I'm on ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fluvoxin. I'm on a bunch of different. I mean, and my doctors are hitting it really hard.
You know what's amazing? When we tried to get that stuff, my pharmacist looked at me like I was, a heroin addict.
Oh, I know. And it's crazy, Mark, because when you understand what hydroxychloroquine does, it just opens a portal into the cells. You can't get zinc is what stops this from spreading in your body and growing. But zinc can't get through the oil or the fat and the water around your cell. So those drugs, all they do is they just make a delivery system so the zinc can get in there. It's not what's fighting it, it's what's allowing it to get into the cell to fight it. And everybody knows this. This is basic science. This is basic medicine. That's what those drugs are used for in many cases. And yet you're treated like you're a moron if you do that. What? I'm going to take a couple of aspirin, go home, and wait until you put me in the hospital? That's insane.
And now's a good time to talk about this whole hydroxychloroquine and zinc that they keep mentioning, especially since Glen Beck actually did a good job of explaining what I'm showing you on your screen right now in very basic terms. Because as we can see here, it tells us that hydroxychloroquine is a zinc iron 4. And just a few noteworthy things here is how this starts off saying the final proposed mechanism, and that's because there were a few other proposed mechanisms, meaning there were other expected ways that hydroxychloroquine could have helped with COVID-19. And to take note of the years, you got 2010 and 2014, so they were dealing with a coronavirus, but not the same coronavirus that kicked off this global pandemic. And something else that's pretty important is what I'm showing you is a couple years old, and the title of it was What Makes Hydroxychloroquine Ineffective Against COVID-19? Insights from Cell Biology. Oof. But the final really important thing I want to point out with all this is how it says here that the experiment was in vitro. It comes from a Latin word that literally means in glass, and it means research and studies that are done outside of the natural organism, usually in a petri dish or test tube or something. And I'd just like to add that I called it. Here, I'll show you. Well, I had a realization after reading this. Ever since the researchers have shown ivermectin could kill COVID in the laboratory, there has been interest in whether the drug would also work to kill the virus in the human body. So far, there has been no clinical evidence it works to treat or prevent COVID-19. Reading this, I was like, I'm not surprised an antiparasitic can kill the virus while it doesn't have a host. I bet heaps of things could, like disinfectant or particular lights. Some people already know what I'm talking about, but for the ones that don't.
And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant.
And so we could understand why a light, antiparasitic and disinfectant would have its challenges when it comes to the whole killing the virus in the human body. So I'm just going to call it now. If there's something else that people start taking or doing that they're saying is going to treat COVID, but it probably isn't, it's probably something that, they're trying to say, oh, there's studies on it. It's probably saying it killed the virus while it didn't have a host. I'm calling it now. See, and I made that video somewhere around September 2021. So let's hear the rest of what Glen Beck had to say during that interview.
Now, how long have you had this?
I've had it for about a week.
But it's not stabilizing?
Yeah, it's not. I'm not going downhill. I mean, I think I'm feeling better. It's just getting into my lungs, which is,
But that's
you know,
the
you
problem.
kind of, yeah, you want to avoid that. But I'm feeling better, and I'm, you know, Mark, I am not concerned about it. I'm really not. I am so done with this whole COVID thing. I mean, I know it's real. You know, I'm well aware of how the thing ran itself in 1918 with the flu. We're going to be living with this for the rest of our lives, but it's going to probably go into a flu or a common cold. Right now, everybody's getting sick because it's very contagious, but it's not nearly as deadly. You know, I'm a fatso, so you know that's probably not the best thing. You know, and I've got some other issues, but you know, that's just the way it is. And we have got to move on with our lives.
Okay, first of all, I would hope he knows it's real if he's had it twice, and how he says it's just going to be like the flu. I find that interesting because people have been able to get seasonal flu shots for a long time. And with that said, what seems to make it easier for people to get on with their lives? The occasional vaccination, or having to take pills or tablets and zinc supplements every day? And some information which will be helpful going into the next clip. The muscle that makes up the walls of the 4 chambers of your heart is the myocardium. And whenever you hear itis at the end of something, like arthritis, it's usually an indication that there's inflammation. So you put the two together, myocarditis.
For young boys in particular, there's an adverse risk associated with the vaccine. It's like a 2 to 4-fold increase in the instances of myocarditis.
Yes, but you know what?
Hospitalization.
You know that there's an increased risk of myocarditis among that age cohort from getting COVID as well, which exceeds the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. No. I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID that are young versus increased risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
No, there is. There's both.
Well, let's look that up because I don't think that's true. Myocarditis more common after COVID-19 infection than vaccination. But is this with children? Yeah, we're talking about young people.
Men and boys aged under 30 after this is what it says here.
With children is the issue.
Well, no, we were talking about 15-year-olds.
Well, we're talking about young children.
Male
child.
12 to 17.
12 to 17, more likely to develop myocarditis within 3 months of catching COVID at a rate of 450 cases per million infection. This compares to 67 cases of myocarditis per million at the same time following their second dose of Pfizer.
Yeah, so you're about 8 times likelier to get myocarditis from getting COVID than from getting the vaccine.
That's interesting.
Now,
that is not what I've read before.
Now, there has been an increase in reports of people ending up with myocarditis after receiving 1 or 2 doses of the Pfizer or Moderna shots. And you might ask, well, where were all the reports about COVID leading to myocarditis? Well, the answer to that is a lot of them mainly came out at the start of the pandemic. Here's just a few examples, and if we take a closer look at this one from 2020, this graphic that was included, I thought this illustrated it well because it shows that the virus can lead to myocarditis, and they're wondering at that stage if the virus is directly infecting the heart cells. And this was back at the time when they're still trying to work out what to use to treat people with, because this is still before vaccines, and so it has hydroxychloroquine as one of the suggestions. 2020 is when they were warning people about this impacting affecting more than just your lungs. And here's 2 paragraphs I'd like to read to you from an article that came out in 2020 titled Long COVID, the Evidence of Lingering Heart Damage. We now know that the SARS-CoV-2 virus gains access to the heart through enzymes called ACE2 and TMPRSS2, the biological locks it picks to slip into human cells. Because these enzymes are present across the body in lung, heart, kidney, liver, gut, and brain tissue, this allows a virus to move from one organ system to another. The fact that the circulating ACE2 levels are higher in men than women is thought to be one of the reasons why men seem to be more vulnerable to COVID-induced heart problems. And at another point in this article it says, once inside the heart, the virus can inflict damage in a number of ways, either through directly invading heart cells and destroying them, or inducing an inflammatory response that can affect cardiac function. The stress on the body from fighting the virus can send the sympathetic nervous system, which directs the body's responses to dangerous or stressful situations, into overdrive, weakening the heart muscle. When scientists at the San Francisco-based Gladstone Institute added the virus to human cells grown in a petri dish, they were alarmed at the extent of the destruction. The long muscle fibers that kept the heart beating had been dissected into fragments, something also seen in autopsies of COVID-19 patients. So after learning all this, in my opinion, the media, even here in Australia, have done a pretty bad job at warning people about the real dangers of catching the virus.
And we know for a fact that these vaccines come with a warning that they bring about myocarditis. But the media is once again gaslighting the public, pretending that to even take notice of this very alarming trend is a conspiracy. The problem isn't that healthy men are dying. The problem is that you're noticing it.
The number of deaths in this country owing to COVID is a scandal, which one day will be clear to Americans.
Alright, just quickly, so Candace Owens says that the media is ignoring people that are being harmed by the vaccine. But Dennis Prager says that they're lying about the amount of COVID deaths. Alright, so if I'm following correctly, they're making out like the virus is worse than what it really is, so we'd all get vaccinations all just to benefit Big Pharma. Now, I find it interesting that COVID-19 vaccines are when they decide to go after Big Pharma. Have they ever talked about the price of pharmaceuticals in America before this? Interesting that this is their concern, because I thought for the most part this was the one thing you're going to get from your government that wasn't going to cost you anything. So when I say preventative care, being vaccinated should prevent you from needing extreme treatment, like ending up in hospital or taking a wide range of other pharmaceuticals.
Hydroxychloroquine,
ivermectin, zinc, Z-Pack,
And Z-Pack,
erythromycin,
fluvoxamine,
prednisone,
monoclonal antibodies. That's Regeneron.
it's monoclonal antibodies.
So basically the case I'm trying to make is if anyone's telling you to not get vaccinated because they're against Big Pharma, what they're doing, whether knowingly or unknowingly, whether they benefit or not, they are pushing Big Pharma. Because obviously they're not against pharmaceuticals, but they are against a form of preventative treatment which would stop you from needing more pharmaceuticals down the track. So I'm making this video to help people understand the lies that are being said to them. And so, like I've said, the reason you'd get vaccinated is to avoid hospitalization from the virus and other effects of long COVID, to avoid needing other pharmaceuticals and other forms of treatment.
Really quickly, why have we not talked about treatment for the last 2 years? Like, why are they against treating this disease they claim to take so seriously?
And so I had to include this clip because Tucker gives it away with the question, asking about why they don't focus on treatment. And like I've been explaining throughout this video, getting vaccinated should help prevent you from needing treatment. And I had to include this clip because what Tucker Carlson's guest does is a perfect example of what I've been talking about. And like the reason I address this video to Americans is to acknowledge that you have an issue with your pharmaceutical companies and the stronghold it has on your media and politics and so many aspects of your society. And so it's very reasonable for many people to have the view that the pharmaceutical companies are not trustworthy because they're not, and that they're only out to make money because they are. And so you're gonna have people take this mistrust that you have, direct it at vaccines, all with the ultimate outcome benefiting other pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, I think it's always useful, Tucker, to ask who gets rich from this and who doesn't. And of course, we know that the pharmaceutical companies that are producing the vaccines, they're out there selling it as a recurring therapy, right? If you have to take a shot, every single person in the country, the government forces you to do it for every 3 months, every 6 months. You make a whole lot more money than a one-off person who happens to have severe COVID getting an antibody treatment. I think that the hidden secret of this is that the government has conspired with the pharmaceutical industry to force the most expensive treatments instead of doing something that would save the most lives and cause the least disruption.
See how he takes it and completely flips it on its head? Because if he's talking about monoclonal antibodies as being the less expensive treatment that's less disruptive, then oh boy.
They're a lot pricier than vaccines. In fact, they're nearly 54 times the value of 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. They're also more complicated to administer.
It's frozen. There has to be a pharmacist who sort of has to pull it up and reconstitute it. And then we have to watch that individual for 1 hour. So you need nurses, you need an infusion center, and you need a place where a COVID positive patient can be seen.
Okay, and the final thing I would like to comment on is why I believe that the monoclonal antibody treatment isn't working for the Omicron variant, and why we will need more booster shots, especially if there are more variants. And to understand this, it really helps to understand your immune system and what vaccines are meant to do, because to put it simply, they give your immune system a heads up so you can already have the antibodies you need for in case you do encounter the actual virus. And so with the monoclonal antibodies, they are getting the antibodies you need for your immune system to effectively fight the virus from a cloned cell. That's why they're called monoclonal antibodies. And so this image I'm going to show you is why it seems like we're going to need different antibodies to fight these different variants. Can you see all the different mutations? And now this is the spike protein, and this is what the antibodies are sticking to, therefore blocking the virus from getting into our cells and making it easier for the cells that make up our immune system to come and find and fight the virus. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there, everybody.